7 steps for working with conflict. I would like to start this by beginning to preface it with saying that really to say there are just 7 steps to this or 10 habits of that or qualities of this is a little bit of a misnomer, because especially with conflict there's so much going on that people are so different and varied. What might work for one situation or one person won't necessarily work for another. And so, but these are some of the core skills that I believe are very important for everybody to take into every interaction that they have with people. And these are not necessarily something that has to be followed in a sequential pattern. And they're something that you integrate within you as opposed to trying to learn and remember, because especially in a conflict, the very last thing we're going to be able to do typically, because we're upset or the other person's upset, is to be able to think very clearly, to remember all the different types of steps that we are trying to work on. The very first concept, though, and each one of these can be broken into and will be expanded upon at a later time, but each one of these I'm going to do a brief overview on. And check yourself is the very first one. Typically in our society it is so easy and so common for people to point the finger and blame the other person. It's the easy way out, and it's something that is kind of indoctrinated into our society, that we're just taught that. Just turn on the TV and you see all the different ways people blame each other all the time, and people duck accountability and responsibility. When instead, if we really look at it, when we point the finger, we have 3 fingers pointing back at us. Now we might be mad or angry or what have you, but we need to look within ourselves. And the better we can work within where we're standing within a situation, the better we can be to focus on bringing resolution or being able to work through the issue. Thomas Crum, a famous author of The Magic of Conflict, Journey to Center, and 3 Deep Breaths, talks about finding our center. Anybody that's taken any kind of meditation, yoga, martial arts class or anything probably has heard of learning to find your center. And I'm not necessarily talking about your physical center, which is something where you breathe in and be able to focus on the center of your abdomen, but also with mentally getting rid of all the clutter. When we're typically in a conflict, let's say this is our mind, we're kind of scattered. Our mind is going a million miles. We have things shooting in, coming out, going in all different directions. And when our mind is in a state like this, the less able we are to have, quality thinking or decision-making abilities. And they've been finding this more and more with the advent of the fMRI technology, where they are doing studies with people. Brain scientists are being able to see different regions of the brain. I can't really draw a very good brain here, but let's say that that's it. Different parts, different lobes of the brain, which are responsible for different sections, are lighting up kind of like thunderstorms, and they're finding that some of those areas are causing the brain not to think as clearly as it needs to, and that's especially true with conflict. So if we can learn to do as Thomas Crum says, is journey to center, find our, just even if it takes a few seconds, just to take a few deep breaths, or as they talk about in Getting Past No, go to the balcony, and it's a mental metaphor of taking a deep breath. If you have to step in the hallway, compose yourself before you go back and work with the other person again, so you can be better in tune to be able to work with them and be able to make some positive strides forward instead of remaining stuck. Step back and see the bigger picture. Now each one of these really we can go into a lot of detail, but a lot of times we believe that we see the bigger picture. We think we see everything there is to see. But in reality, there's often a much bigger picture than what we even know. We could be responsible for quite a bit and be really knowing the ins and outs of stuff, but there might be another whole panorama that maybe, this is what we are seeing, and we think we're seeing the bigger picture. We've got our frame of reference here, and we think that this is everything that there is, when in turn, somebody else might have, looking at the same issue, they're seeing things from a lot different angle. And it's not that one's necessarily right or the other one's wrong. It's just we need to do, the stepping back. And these are pictures of somebody's eyes. Stepping back and taking a wider view and being able to see the whole issue and how it interrelates with other things to find the bigger picture. So again, that goes into a lot of detail with some things, and I'm just doing an overview at this point. But one of the things that I think is really important is to be able to be aware of our judgments. Now, a lot of times people say, well, I'm not a judgmental person. But when you really challenge yourself and look at it, I challenge people all the time to go for a day or a week or even longer, in some respects, try to live the rest of your life with being aware of your judgments. And we all have them, whether we want to admit them or not. But being able to notice that I'm having a positive or a negative judgment about certain things, people, events, situations. And the more you do this, you'll catch yourself at times having judgments that maybe you might not like. Maybe you didn't realize you were having some of those judgments about, again, different people, experiences, things, and what have you. And this isn't done to make yourself feel bad for having all these thoughts. I mean, it's pretty common in our society to, typically lean toward the negative. But if we're more aware of that, then we can start to make strides to make some improvements to working to overcome some of those things. And by having a better acknowledgement of what our judgments are, we can then go even deeper if we choose to and try to find out why we have that judgment and how is it serving us or how is it getting in our way. Biases are another really kind of fun and exciting thing to talk about, as well as to look within ourselves to find out what our biases are for a lot of the same reasons. These are, let's say this is chocolate ice cream and this is vanilla. Well, if I have what's called a confirmation bias for chocolate, it means I believe so much in the chocolate and I have such a bias for it that I might be able to come up with reports and facts all about how much better it is than other stuff. I'll have other friends that I can talk to that say, yeah, this is the best stuff ever. They all agree with me. Look at how great this is. And this person on the other side, they can easily probably do the same thing. They can find information, maybe even more information, who knows. And they can also talk to their friends and have them say, well, yeah, I think vanilla's better. So what happens here, though, is instead of really being able to be, I guess a common word today is transparent, be able to openly accept where the other side is coming from, what the person with a cognitive bias does is they look at it and say, my side is right, and so I'm going to dismiss all of your information here. I'm not even going to hear it a lot of times, or I'm just going to believe it's no good. And I'm going to look at my evidence here, and only it is correct. And so in a sense, it's a form of a comfort zone. It is a comfort zone. And a comfort zone is kind of like the journey to center type of thing, where our center here is where we're feeling comfortable. That's just it, a comfort zone. And when something outside of our comfort zone challenges us, that's scary territory. And this is where it's really important to have a coach or a mentor or a leader or somebody who can help us get to the edge of that comfort zone, and instead of retreating right back into that safety, learn to push on it a little bit. And by pushing on it, we expand and we grow and we become a stronger individual, and we grow in different directions depending on where we're pushing our comfort zones. And we all have them. And so being aware of those comfort zones and judgments, biases, can be incredibly helpful for when you're dealing with conflict in other people. And again, we have to move on. There can be a lot more, and that'll be in another video. But the next stage is getting off blame and control. Well, we all have times where we want to blame somebody for something. It's the easy way to go. It's a negative route. Negative is just always so easy to go, especially in our culture. As I mentioned before, you just turn on the TV and you find people blaming each other right away before they even take the time to, again, see that bigger picture of what's going on. And they usually look for somebody that they can blame it on. And sometimes that's at the expense of accountability. It's easier to blame it on somebody else instead of being able to step up and be the bigger person and say, I might have had some culpability in this. So looking at that issue and realizing that, as the frame of reference goes, maybe there's more to it. Maybe what I'm assigning or attributing that blame to this person for is really an unknown variable that's out here past my comfort zone. And because it's past my comfort zone and it scares me, I'm just going to assign the blame. Or a control is another issue. It's beyond my control, and so that makes me feel uncomfortable, so I might push against that. So, and each of these things, again, can be expanded upon. When I say respect people and the problem, well, we think we respect people, and generally we try to, but when we really look at it, especially when we're talking about some of the things with the biases and the judgments, we might have an like a shadow belief below us about a judgment that we have about people, that even though we think we're treating them with respect, we really might not be. And having respect for the problem. A lot of times this is overlooked. A lot of times people say, let's just get through it. Instead, we need to maybe analyze, where did it come from? Why is it here? What can we learn from this? And all of these different factors about the problem, and being able to appreciate it instead of just getting it off of us because it might be painful to deal with. It very well might have a lot to teach us about some of the things that we need to be facing. Listening, we've probably had courses on how to listen, but the problem is a lot of times people listen to the words, but we're not really listening for, what did they say? What am I really hearing? What are their needs? What is their intention? What are they really needing? Because people are very good at, speaking a lot, and we might listen and hear everything they say, but we're not really paying attention to really tuning into, again, what are the needs behind what's going on with that person. So the last stage is work toward the right solution. We might be in a bitter conflict right here, and the very first thing that pops up as a solution is, a lot of times, our knee-jerk reaction is just go with that, because it's the first viable thing and it's easy and people just want to get the conflict over with and get through with it, when in reality there might be several different options. And unless you're like in an emergency situation, then of course you do want to take the first solution that you can take. But if you have the time in a conflict, you want to try to weigh and look at these different solutions, because if you're just taking this one might morph into a really big problem where you have more people involved and more conflict and more strife and more things are blowing up in every direction, because a simple solution now might seem to get this conflict over with, but it might create another one down the road, or a much bigger one. Instead, if we take the time, and this is working with decision making and so forth, being able to find and select the right problem, it might take a little bit more conflict to work through and get to this right solution, but it's going to be far better if we look down the road of what the solutions can be for doing these types of things. So hopefully this has been helpful, and hopefully I haven't went too fast and it's been sensible, and I will be doing more videos on this, and I would love to hear your feedback. And once again, my name is Mark Adams, and this is Achievement Edge, and this is the beginning of a series on conflict resolution. Thank you very much.